Hello. Boomi clouds, Boomi public clouds are great. They are low configuration. They have low configuration method of deploying and executing processes, but they do have some limitations. One of those limitations becomes apparent when you are using a public cloud's shared web server and call a listener. As you can see with our simple test process, you may have a listener process triggered by a shared web server call, and then that triggers some other connectors or subprocesses. Sometimes you can expect the initial shared web server call to itself return a payload after the other steps are to run. If so, you want to be aware of the potential for timeouts and the best way to avoid them. Because the public clouds are hosting a large number of customers, there are some trade offs and constraints that we have to consider that do not apply to private environments. In order to prevent a potential blocking, there is a property of the shared web server called max idle timeout that we have to set to 30 seconds. If the rest of your execution takes longer than 30 seconds, that initial invoking call to the web server will return a 502. Meanwhile, the rest of the processes will continue to run and will likely even show up on your process reporting page. Above, you can see from process reporting that this listener ran successfully. But you can also see that it had a high elapsed time beyond that 30 seconds threshold. So I received a 502 in Postman where I started the process, but the rest of the process is still completed. This can be avoided in private environment by changing the shared web server's max idle timeout property to longer than 30 seconds. If you wish to continue to use a public cloud, it is often simplest not to expect a shared web server to return any data by setting the response output time to none instead of single data. This allows that initial web server call to end without returning any data or error, and your process continues to execute with the remaining logic. There are two simple ways to resolve this. Firstly, this can be avoided in private environment by changing the shared web server's max idle timeout property to longer than 30 seconds. That can be done by editing your container properties file, which is in the atom install slash config slash directory. This will require a manual change to the container.properties file and keep in mind that the property called com.boomicontainer.sharedwebserver.http max idle time setting is in milliseconds right here. If you wish to continue to use a public cloud, it is often simplest to not accept a web server call to return any data by setting the response output time to none instead of single data. This allows that initial web server call to end without returning any data or any error. And your process continues to execute with the remaining logic. And that's it for this video. Thank you.